So essentially, the way the session will work is that I'll be introducing Sharan Apparao, and then I'll be engaging with her in a moderated Q&A, and post that, we'll open it up for the audience. The total duration for this talk is going to be an hour. And to begin with, thank you so much, Sharan, for accepting our invitation. And we hope to have a really, really engaging and exciting session with you. So Sharan Apparao has been associated with the visual arts for over 3.5 decades. Working primarily with arts from India, she is known to work with very young artists, putting them on the map of art. She has been acknowledged and followed keenly for her sense of aesthetics and sharp eye in picking the best artists and giving them the platform and confidence to shape themselves for the future. Having worked with great well-known artists very early in her career, her exposure allowed her to work overseas with Indian art when it was hardly known. Educated in the Fine Arts Department of Stella Maris College, Chennai, she went on to sharpen her education and add to her training with internships and short focus courses like the one on writing in arts at the Harvard University, USA, luxury management at IIM Ahmedabad, and the SE College in Cergy University, Paris. Internships very early in her career at Smithsonian Museum, and so on and so forth. And her ability to put together interdisciplinary art activities in changing, adapting, and keeping with the times has allowed her to set herself apart from many others and making her business relevant to the changes that the country has brought in the last 3.5 decades, that she has been involved with the arts. She set up the Apparao galleries in the early 1980s. Her public art projects allowed her to work on scale on artworks for hotels like the St. Regis Maldives, Chutney Mary London, Park Sheraton Chennai, the Park Chennai, Intercontinental Chennai, Sullivan Court Ooty, ITC Vizag, the Residency Coimbatore, the Lodi New Delhi, and so on and so forth. She currently works with her teams between Chennai, Delhi, and Bombay. Welcome, Sharan, and thank you once again for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
To dive straight into it, I'd like to ask you actually, how did your tryst begin? Because I've followed your practice working as an art historian and curator. I've really followed your practice. You've worked very, very closely with some of the biggest names in the art world.
I think I was lucky. I was at the right time at the right place. I studied art, and like all 20-year-olds, you don't know what you're going to do. And, I think 20-year-olds now have a little bit more of a focus than we did 40 years ago. So I studied art, and then I was looking at what to do. And I was really quite rudderless. And I had a lot of friends who were involved in the arts, but older people who thought that it's a good idea to be in the arts, and I was not quite sure till I read this book. And it's funny because I had forgotten the name of this artist, and this writer, and recently I was racking my brains, and and then I found the name, and I found the book. And so it was a writer called Calvin Tompkins who wrote this book about how the Metropolitan Museum was founded on somebody's dream. So that actually gave me the confidence to think that, okay, maybe I can do it. Because, I don't come from a business, I come from an art family. I don't have a lineage of art or business. So for me, it was really a fun thing that I wanted to do. And it started as fun, but obviously it was too much fun, and it continues to be so. So that's really, I got into it, dived straight into it. Yeah. And maybe people called me reckless. Maybe I am reckless. Maybe it's all of these things. So I do things, and I set standards for myself, and I compete with myself. So, I'm still enjoying it. I don't know how much longer, but I'm still enjoying it.
So what is, because you work so closely with, setting up collections, working with hotels, working with, such corporate spaces, private collectors, what do you think drives people to buy art? Why do they buy it?
I think the most important thing is to engage with them because not everybody knows about art, and one has to educate them and give them an introduction. And I don't mean to be condescending by saying that you need to educate them, but unless you have that conversation with them, and unless you're able to convince them, first you have to be convinced yourself, because when you are convinced, then you can convince another person, right?
Right.
So I think you have to believe in what you're doing, and then it's very easy to trans translate that to another person. So I think that's really how it happened, because I was truly, truly taken up by art, and I was like, I mean, I did everything. I was a very hands-on person. So I would travel, I would go look at artworks, I would go to artist studios, engage with them. And then it allowed me to understand, after studying art history, you have a stepping stone of art history to then look at things in that lens. So it was easier to understand artists and art practices. But definitely what I learned in Stella Maris was just not sufficient. I had to learn a lot on the road. And I think it was all of this that, when communicated to collectors, when communicated uh, to various institutions, they realized that you actually had the confidence and then trusted you to do these things. So I think the most important thing is to communicate and build a trust, uh, which which takes many years. I mean, it does take, after doing a few things, then people believe you, and then they see what you've done already, and then they go with that.
All right. And so the working very closely with people, what do you think are the different ways or strategies, or what are the different ways in people look at collecting versus investing in arts?
That's a very good question, and that's a very difficult one. There is a big difference between collecting and investing. Okay, huge difference. You collect because you love it. So you invest because you don't have the confidence, and you follow the market. I think that's the inherent difference between collecting and investing. And when you're a collector and you buy because you love something, then you're not looking so much at the money, and you're not looking at the returns. You're looking at the joy you're getting from it. And I think that goes much, much further, because when you're investing in it, I think you're looking only at the balance sheet. You're looking at, what is your return on investment and things like that. And not all the time does that allow you to engage with the art. So that is a big difference, because I know investors who just buy because it is a Arpita Singh or a Sabawala or a whatever. But whereas there are collectors who will buy some young artist, young, exciting artist, like all the young people that we're all working with. And then I think the content becomes important, because art has to make your heart sing, and when it makes five people's art sing, then that artist also gets better, right? And obviously then people are liking him, and so
Yeah,
he's going to get more and more attention.
yeah.
So I think that's the difference between the two.
All right. And have you seen certain trends or some kind of patterns over the years, in terms of maybe, material, in terms of maybe the format of the work that people have sort of been drawn to naturally, or do you see a change in that taking place over the years?
Yeah, what I see now, I see first of all the visual language changing. I don't deal a lot with the new media, though I'm interested, but I'm not sure. I'm not so convinced about every bit of new media, because
Yeah,
I'm not so convinced about things like NFTs. Just
yeah,
maybe I'm just old school, So when you talk about painting and sculpture, and you see the changing trends there, I see the visual language changing. I feel that people are more accepting of new, let's say, new idioms. There are also new narratives. And yeah, because, from very classical academic things to what people are doing. Just take, for example, you look at a Badri Narayan work from the 80s or the 90s, and you look at, say, someone like a Dushyant Patel, you see immediately the visual language is different. And both are relevant for that time. And I think that's what is important. Like, when Jitish started doing a lot of work that was related to current events, he made his point and people started looking at current events differently. So now when you look at it, you look at what people are concerned about. I mean, whether it's the environment or whether it's mythological thoughts, or whether, whether it's somebody's journey. I think the whole visual trajectory is changing. I think that's the trend I've definitely seen with people. Some may take from other places, but on the whole, there's definitely a more refined visual language that you see now.
All right. All right. And how do you assess the value and pricing of artworks, especially when with so many like changes in
Very,
genres? Yeah.
very difficult. See, when we're dealing with the blue chip, we know we follow prices that the market takes. When it's young artists, I always tell them that it's a very, very, very fine line between the right price and the wrong price. Because and I've seen many artists who have not succeeded because of pricing. So one has to test the market. It's not easy, but it's always better to make it more attractive than not. Because in the beginning, if an artist actually allows the price to be attractive, then the work reaches more people, and then it builds up from there. But when the price is just even that wee bit higher, it doesn't work. And the other thing that I've seen is established artists, okay? Artists who've built a career for maybe 5 or 10 years, or maybe even 15 years. And suddenly they change their pricing. Maybe because they're with a new gallery, or maybe just that they feel that other people are getting that price, so why can't I get it? And I've seen that they go downhill. I've seen this with many artists, and it's very sad because that's when they fall off the radar. Yeah. And so pricing is of primary importance. I try to tell people this. I try to tell artists I work with, because people also have to feel happy to buy the work. You can't put pressure on them and their purse strings. And if they're happy, everybody is happy, then the artist is also happy, and that helps the artist to step up each time. Yeah. And this is quite an important lesson for artists. And for collectors, I would like to say one thing, that it's better if they believe in an artist to buy when they're young. Okay, so we have dealt with many collectors who we've sold works to, and then who come back to us and said, oh my God, the current price is so much. And I'm like, aren't you happy that you bought it when you did? So I think, you have to follow your instincts. Yeah. Because if you say, oh, the auction has not had this artist and I'm not going to buy this because of that, then it's your loss. Because you may be buying something for 5 rupees, which is going to go up. Or, you can make losses too. So I think one has to follow their heart. So for me, I strongly believe that it's better to be a collector who collects for the love of it, following their passion, rather than somebody who's buying to resell in 3 years' time. I mean, that's too risky for me. I don't like to give people guarantees and say, yeah, buy this, it's going to go up so much. It's just, that's a very foolhardy thing to do.
Yeah. So what are the strategies that you've seen collectors adopt over the years, whether it's for collecting it for the love of it or for the investment? Like, are there any systematic patterns?
Yeah, people collect. When those who collect the same artist, which I think is a very good thing to do, and they keep on buying that artist, or maybe they're following 4 or 5 artists. The other thing is that some people collect only South India, some people collect only Bengal, some people collect only moderns. So those are the kind of focuses that I've seen with collectors, and it's good to have a focus. There's one collector I know in Delhi who only collects paperwork because he wanted to buy everybody's work. And I just think that he was smart in saying that let me buy what I can afford, and built a fantastic paperwork collection. And paperwork, actually, people don't respect it as much as they should, because if you want to look at real art, and you want to look at the real soul, and you want to look at the real intent, you always see it in drawings, in sketches, in watercolors, because that's what is spontaneous with an artist.
Yeah.
And if you're enjoying the art for its art's sake, that's a good place to start. I just went to this Giacometti show, and oh my God, the drawings and the studio, they've recreated his studio, the drawings on the walls of that studio, and then the notebooks. The notebooks were just so fabulous, because you see that whole, you really see his soul there, because that's so spontaneous. It's not done for anybody. So I feel that if you can lay your hands, if the young collectors can lay their hands on those kind of works, that'll be just great. Because those are meaningful works. Yes, of course, important canvases are important, and large canvases make their presence felt in different collections. However, I think one should not ignore the initial drawings that artists make.
Yeah. So you clearly don't have that kind of push for painting as a gallerist as well, right? I mean,
No,
canvas, so to
I
say.
do. I love
Okay.
paintings. I mean, I definitely sell a lot of artists' canvases, but
Okay.
I'm saying is don't ignore the drawings and the sketches.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, one should, if you're a collector, one should have important works. But, as a beginner, you can't have everything. So it's fine to collect. I think it's very important to collect drawings. And also, there are some artists who didn't do paintings, like large canvas paintings. If you look at Lakshma's early works, they were all prints, and they were all small format works. You look at Nasreen's works, they were small, and they were all drawings. You look at so many people, you look at them and you'll see them only as drawings. Like I have seen Vaikuntam's etchings from the 70s and his drawings from the 80s that have so much of an intensity. And now I think he's doing canvases and things like that, which are different, but the charm and intensity of the early works is something that you can never equate.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I know exactly what you're talking about, because I've done a printmaking exhibition for Latitude, and a lot of the big names that we today associate with painting, or sculpture also for that matter, one looks at most of them had a printmaking background early on. And you look at the prints, you look at the drawings, and it's just a very, very different conversation. Like somebody like a Palaniappan, like I had his prints for the show, and they were breathtaking. I mean, he was working with.
He is one of those completely underrated people. And I think the whole South has been, I'm not partial because I'm from India, but I know how good they are and how undervalued these artists. And Palaniappan definitely is one of them. Because even when you talk to him, even as a person, he has just so much of depth. And he's easily one of India's most respected and most accomplished printmakers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The work that he was doing, actually, so we had some of his works from the 80s. The prints that
oh my God, those were just fantastic. And the person who used to collect a lot was Al-Khazi. And I keep asking Tariq and all this. I said, do you ever take out all these works and look at them? And Palniappan, of course, is going to do this retrospective. So he's asked me if I could lend him some of the works that I had that were from the early years. And when I collected without a focus and completely by default, because as a gallerist, my priority was not to keep for myself, but I would keep because I paid somebody, because somebody needed the money, blah blah, all this. So just by default, I ended up keeping some very nice works, something that didn't sell because whatever, it doesn't sell for various reasons, and my luck that it didn't. Because I remember I had this very spectacular not Hussein, Sousa painting. And my mother would always tell me, "Oh my, it's a beautiful nude." And she'd look at it and say, "But what will the carpenter say?" I was like, "I didn't buy it for the carpenter. Do you mind?" So, and she would keep saying, "Yeah, I think you should sell it." And, when you're persuaded by somebody at home, then I thought, okay, I must sell it for whatever reason. And I didn't get to sell it. I didn't push or whatever. I liked it too much, I think. So, and then I ended up keeping it. And then I think, okay, I think that's a default because I was not aggressive about pushing it, and I ended up keeping it. So like that, so many works came to me by accident, I want to say. And I'm glad for those works. But so for me, I collected without a focus because of where I was, but I had access, of course, to many, many fantastic works. I mean, fantastic works from Amrita Shergill's to Ravi Verma's to Hussein's to Sabawala's to everything. And I think back and I think, oh goodness, why did I not buy them? But how much can you buy and how much money can you have? I mean, we were all young. We all started our careers with next to nothing.
Yeah. Over the years, what do you how important do you think? Because again, you're talking about names. We've spoken of a couple of them, and today the works are like, I mean, ridiculously high priced, right? So how important do you think now, looking back, do you think documentation, provenance, and paperwork is in terms of collections?
It is important. It is very important because I think it's important for people to keep their records straight. I also think it's important for, see, today you have Instagram and phones that take pictures and blah, blah, all this. We never had all this back in the day. I mean, I had some albums where I had some photographs and things like that. And really, that is really like the dark ages. And but it's important to keep that. And very few people understand the value of an archive, uh, and keeping that archive, records, letters, notes, photographs. I remember when I did Swaminathan's exhibition, how Swami used to always be very bohemian. And because he was in Chennai and, he's South Indian, he came wearing this really beautiful white, crisp veshti with his hair washed. And, he had this long hair and he looked like a painting. And I have this photograph, I must find it somewhere, uh, of him standing in my terrace garden and just with this really benign smile. And it was just such a lovely photograph. And I just think that today you take these pictures and you don't, you just take many pictures. And so this documentation is so important. I think it's important also because those days you don't see these artists again. And I used to go and sit with Jahangir Sabawala for hours. And he wanted me to make this film. Okay. And he asked me to find a sponsor. So I said, yeah, I'll find a sponsor. Of course, I went and asked 2 or 3 people, and they were like, for what reason are we going to sponsor some film of some Jahangir Sabawala who we don't know? Okay, I mean, they were like completely not interested. And I don't know how I was going to tell him this. So I just said, I have to do this. I don't know how I'm going to do this. So then he said, that works are ready for the next exhibition, but, we need this uh, film and blah, blah. So I said, okay, so what are the prices of the paintings? So he told me that I can't remember now, but I think something like 45,000 rupees. So I said, okay, Jahangir, I sponsor it. He looked at me and said, what do you mean you would sponsor it? I said, you're telling me, you're giving me 15 paintings and you need 15 lakhs. I'll add the money to the paintings. He said, but no, you cannot sell it at that price. I said, no, we'll sell it at that price. And we did that. We took the money, we sold the painting, but the money went straight into this film, and we made it. So you have to find ways to do it, and it's so important. I mean, this Asia Art Archive is such a valuable thing, where you have so much documentation, so much stuff about so many people. I had 25 boxes of all my archive, and I gave it to my college, and I said, why don't you do something with it? And after 5 years, they didn't even open one box. Okay, I was like, ugh. I didn't know what to say to them. They didn't understand the value at all. So I said, no, you just give it back to me and I'll figure something out. And I had to take it back because how can you explain to somebody what the value of an archive is? Okay. And today my archive is 40 years. And, I have so much of things that are irrelevant to somebody else, but to an archivist or a researcher, they're very valuable.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know how to explain this to anybody, but it's so important. The documentation that a collector builds, what that artists build for themselves, all that are so valuable. Like now when I talk to, say, someone like Palniappan, and he says, oh, Alkazi bought every print of mine and things like that, I think, oh my God, how lucky that you know where every print of yours is. It doesn't matter that you didn't print the whole edition, but at least you know where that one work is.
Yeah.
So
and the photo documentation also adds. It also adds value to the provenance because, eventually when one is trying to, resell the work, or put it in an auction, it really helps you build the legitimacy and the entire artistry around it.
Yeah, you look at what is happening now with all these Nazi works. The only way these families can claim them today are with some kind of documentation that the painting did belong to them. Because now, like third generation or fourth generation of people, how do they actually prove that, yes, my great-grandparents owned this work? So unless you have that, I mean, the archiving and documentation is a huge value. Huge value.
What was the whole scene around authenticity certificates like back in the day? Now it's become a norm. Everybody gets an authenticity certificate with the work.
They didn't exist. Because I mean, it's only the last 5 years that I've given these certificates. But I'll tell you, I mean, nobody, when I told people, oh, I have this Raza for sale, nobody asked me, is it a fake? Is it a real one? Nobody ever asked me that. Because of course I would come back and say, oh my God, he said this, or he said that. And of course, what the comments I got were not about the authenticity, but even I can paint this. What is this circle? Stupid things like that, which were well at that time and age and those type of people, it's all right. But there was no question of all this of authenticity then. And the only thing that I remember was maybe 20 years ago, it started with Jamini Roy, when people said, oh my God, in Calcutta, you better be careful, blah, blah, because things are different. But, I'll tell you, they didn't understand the studio practice because Jamini had a studio and there were artists who painted with him. And that is really what went out from his studio. All of the work was that. Then many others did the same thing later, but it was not acceptable till very recently. Because now, when you look at people like Manjeet, people like Souza, people like Anjali, people like so many people, then the studio practices have assistants and it's acceptable. Yes, there were some purists like Jahangir Sabawala who painted everything himself, carried the canvas himself, moved it, oh, did all of that. And if you went to a studio, my God, you should have seen his palettes. Okay, you know how he had those gradations of color. Okay,
Yeah,
and I saw this palette, and I wish I had asked him for a palette then. It was really like a work of art because
yeah,
the shades of gray, you could actually tell it was like this Pantone shade card, and it was just quite amazing.
yeah,
And, but Raza, on the other hand, he gave me a palette and he said, yeah, yeah, take it. This is my palette. Because he used to throw the pins, the this, the that. That was like a sculpture. Some two little boxes, then that box was open because he was throwing the paint in it. It got stuck, it became flat. Then he's thrown some other garbage in it. There's some wires in it, all kinds of things. And it really became like very spontaneous sculpture that like you didn't expect it to be. I mean, he's not
yeah,
a sculptor, so you don't look at it as a sculpture, but today when you look at it, it is something like that.
yeah, yeah. No, I can imagine because so we recently did a complete not recently, about 2.5, 3 years ago, right after the pandemic. In fact, right after the first lockdown, we did a complete archival project for Jyoti Bhatt and Jyotsna Bhatt's collection. And the things that come out of the studio, right? It's the drawings, the letters, there are these notes, and all of that, at the end of it, it's a revelation.
It's so important.
Yeah,
I think that going into an artist studio, once I was in Raza's studio, and I can't remember what it was. And he said, okay, you climb up the ladder, go to my loft and take out all these works. So anyway, I got into that loft and my God, what all came out of there. And his studio was just fantastic because there was a big room and he would just be sitting there. And then you were drinking tea, coffee, and then there was this cat called Bernard. And we would just go down to eat to this restaurant below his building, and there were books and there were notes and there were papers, and then he was writing things on scraps of paper. And it was just quite, if you have to recreate that studio and see that, it's quite something. I feel sad that we didn't take enough photographs of it. Yeah, one time I went to Ganesh Pine's studio, and I think he never used to let anybody in. I went in there and I was completely amazed because he had drawings on walls. Okay, like the jottings that there are. He had those drawings completely. I have photographs of that. And then he said, I said, will you let me take a picture? And he said, yeah, you can take a photograph. And he said, I don't let people into my studio normally, but it's okay, you can come in. And it was just the vibrations in that studio were quite something. And I felt that in many artist studios, because I suppose they've all been intense people, right? And you feel that intensity around their work and around their process, actually.
I have a question. So have you seen this happen with collectors having this kind of mad passion for, some works? Like I know of somebody who is in Gujarat, and both of them, like both the husband and wife, they have a mad passion for, like, really going out, documenting every piece around their work. So that work is there, but, like, every piece of documentation, be it photographs, be it, certificates, and, like, certificates of certificates,
Yeah, there are
and,
very
like, the
few
histories
people.
around it.
Very few people do that, but that is lovely. I mean, that's passion, no?
Yeah.
That's the real collector.
Yeah.
You then get everything because a lot of people don't pay attention to detail. I
Yeah.
mean, they have to pay X amount and keep the painting, but all this actually adds value to it.
I remember Sotheby's, or one of them actually, they had come to Ahmedabad to authenticate a work of Bhupen. This is quite a long time ago, actually. And the family that the work belonged to, they were authenticating it. And oh my God, I mean, again, like one of the old families. So the amount of documentation that they had, and they put up all of it as a part of, the catalog.
Okay.
And eventually what happened, because of that documentation of, like not just the certificates and stuff like that, but Bhupen being in front of the work in the exhibition space, Bhupen being invited for lunch or dinner at one of their residences, and talking about it, like making like a impromptu drawing and all of it, and alongside that a bunch of other things. So somebody at Christie's eventually, they said that, because of all of this documentation, and because we're going to sort of, push this documentation also as a part of the auction information, he's like, I'm not going to be surprised if it goes like 20-25% higher than, our expected price range as well. And it did. It actually broke a couple of records at that particular point of time. I think it was 2010 or 11 or something.
I think the selling the narrative is as important as selling the artwork.
Yeah.
Because when I'll tell you, I was doing a show in Bangalore many years ago. I can't even remember when.
Yeah.
And Krishan Khanna and Sabawala were both there with me because I was showing their work.
Yeah.
And so we were having breakfast, and a collector friend of mine came, and I said, I'm there, so why don't you come and have breakfast with us? So he came. He and his wife collect a lot of work, and they're both very good friends of mine. And he sat with us right through breakfast, and I think we almost ended up having many coffees, and it was lunchtime. But whatever, I think the fact that he got to know them so well had such an important impact on him that when a very spectacular Sabawala small work from the 50s came up and I told him, he didn't even think twice. He said, yes, I'll take that. It was because of that association of that one morning where they both, and nobody was selling anything. We were not in the selling mode at all. We were just having this lovely morning of talking about art. And really, when you those days, you could just spend a lot of time just talking. I mean, the hours I've spent with Jahangir and his wife, and with Krishan Khanna in the early years, and you get so much of an energy of that time and place. And that does help when you have to buy the work, because you automatically you've bought it all by talking to them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I suppose the documentation is like talking to them.
Yeah, it is in a lot of regard, because I mean, there are so a lot of young collectors that one comes across today. I don't know, have you seen that change? Young collectors seem to be a little more systematic or organized, do you feel?
Yes. I've been seeing that because I've been meeting a lot of very good young collectors. Recently, I met a young boy. I'm calling him because he must be quite young, and who had started collecting South Indian art. People from Tamil Nadu.
Yeah.
And I was so enchanted with him because he had so many anecdotes, and it was suddenly for me like going back in many years, because he obviously is researching and finding all this data and then sharing it. And it was very nice. He said, I read this, I found this. And for me, I used to go to this Chola Mandal, sit down, and this Nanda Gopal will tell me some story, somebody else will tell me some story, and then you drink this many teas and keep on talking to them and get all this information. And here, this poor boy is doing this research and telling them, and so systematically, you're right. So, he's one of the few young collectors I've seen doing this, and I'm seeing this often. And I have another young person who calls me all the time, I've seen this. What do you think about this? I've looked at this. This is related to that. All sorts of things that maybe even I don't know that he brings to my notice. So it's quite interesting to note that the youngsters are taking a lot of trouble. I also think today technology helps because everybody has access to information.
Yeah.
And which is a good thing. We didn't have it.
Yeah. I think there's also that shift and change, because there's a lot of consideration that people also have in terms of, setting up estates, setting up like a very long-term plan in terms of, potential futures and things
Yeah.
like that, because there
Yeah.
you also have so much awareness that's around.
Yeah.
Uh,
In fact,
you,
next weekend, we're doing a series of talks
okay.
because we're doing a Ravi Verma print exhibition in our gallery just now, and we're doing a series of talks, and one of that is art and law, and part of that art and law panel is estate management.
Yeah, we are also doing art and law as a part of this program as well. So I think this is something that's also, I think, an added advantage. Like there's also
Yeah,
that.
there's people interested because
Yeah.
all these things when they're out on this YouTube, people, where else are people going to learn all these things?
Yeah, yeah.
We learn things the hard way. Now you're laying it out for them, and it's good.
Yeah. What do you what do you see? What kind of role do you see, or what are the ways in which you would recommend somebody to who's beginning? What are the like 4 or 5 things they should keep in mind in terms of doing that little bit of documentation, or figuring out a little bit of conservation and stuff like that around their work?
Conditions are important, but conditions are always reversible, so that's not so difficult. And there are lots of restoration studios everywhere. There are good restorers everywhere, so that's a good thing that has happened. So yes, understanding the condition, understanding the artist. Uh, I think the more people see and read, I think the better it is, because I think one should go with some kind of knowledge, because sometimes we advise people um, who are doing up homes and they have no idea about art, and it's very sad because they're all spending lots of money and with no focus. And even that little bit of reading can help you nudge them in the right direction, but if they don't, then it's actually money down the tubes. So
Sure.
yeah, so I think that not little bit of building that knowledge, and today it's so easy to do that.
My last question to you, any personal project that maybe you did for a hotel or a bank or a corporate that you had the most fun sort of building that collection, or maybe an anecdote around it, that might be of interest to young collectors listening?
Oh my God, I have too many stories. And then last night I had dinner with a collector who had bought a Ravindra Reddy from me 22 years ago.
Oh,
And it
wow.
was very nice. I hadn't seen them in many years, and I actually ran into them in one of the fairs in Paris here. And they said, "Oh my God, you're in town. Why don't you come for dinner?" So I said, "Okay." And I was so happy to go there. And then they were telling everybody that husband and wife, and they French people, and they said, "Oh my God!" And we bargained with her and bargained like these street bargainers. I said, "Well, I don't think you bargained hard enough, because I don't recall that at all." And they were diplomats. So then they bought it in those days when everything cost nothing, you
Yeah.
know. And so it was very nice to go. And then there were about 10 other people. And then he said, "I've been married to my wife, but all along I have a secret. There's been this other woman." So I knew where he was coming from. And he said, "And this woman is here, and he showed the sculpture." And so it was very nice. And then he said that he took it from us these 22 years ago and whatever. So it's nice when you have things like that, coming back. And
Yeah.
sometimes in my business, sometimes you get really dejected because there are lots of things going wrong and people saying things and all sorts of things. And then you think, "Oh no, this is not worth it at all." And then you'll find a little spark like this that'll come and say, "Okay, it's worthwhile." I
Yeah.
think it's the same thing as having children, no? The children can be really bad and they give you some joy. So it's the same thing.
No, thank you. Thank you so much, Tarun, for this wonderful conversation. I'm sure our people participating over here, they would have had a wonderful time. We still have about 5-10 minutes for Q&A. So we could maybe open it up to the audience. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So guys, anybody, if you have any questions, please.
Hi, Sharan. This is Harsh here, joining in from Paris as well. Thank you so much for this session.
You're
Really
welcome.
appreciate it.
You're
Really
welcome.
appreciate it. How long are you here in Paris for?
I'm here till Monday. I go back on Monday evening. What about you?
I am there all day tomorrow, so let's try and connect and catch up over at least a coffee if we can.
Yeah. Good idea. Good idea.
Yeah. Okay,
Very good
great.
idea.
I will allow the others to ask their questions. Thank you so much, Sharan.
Not at all. Not at all.
You could unmute yourself. I think, yeah, you can unmute yourself. If you have any questions, please. All right. I think we can wrap up the session. It's okay. There has been. What's a good way for artists to connect with gallerists and collectors without really wanting to sell, just for a conversation? It's a question from Purvi Sultania.
I think it's important to just, that's a very good question, because very often without being a artist of that gallery, it's difficult to go and just start chit-chatting. But I think, there are always openings and there are always gallerists are in their gallery and one can always approach them. It's not so easy because, people are busy too. But yeah, I suppose openings are a good start. Social gatherings are a good start to start talking to gallerists.
You?
And what? I can't read that.
And what when you're in a different city and can't be physically present?
Oh, I don't know, maybe WhatsApp? But it's not, you can't have a conversation if you're not in the same city, unless you're in one of these, what are they called? Culture club? Culture club?
Yeah,
or something like that.
Yeah.
Hi, so it's a little bit loud where I am. I'm not sure if you can hear me well.
Yeah,
we can.
Okay, great. So I think it'd be better if I kind of ask the question in person. So basically, I've seen that a lot of times gallerists and collectors look at artists with this lens of always wanting something immediate or something on the lines of selling to them. And
Yes.
it's a little bit of a disappointment because sometimes, we just want to chat or get to know what you do or how you do things. Or maybe as a young artist myself, I look to understand how certain things work, either in the market or just in general, have a conversation about art. And I feel that even if it's a very genuine question, there is such a high bias that as soon as you introduce yourself as an artist, people start to want to push you away. And
I agree. And I think that's a really sad situation, but I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. So I think the way around is, I don't know about other galleries and I don't know how approachable all of them are, but what happens with us is we do a lot of lectures and talks, like how we're doing this here with Iram Art. We do this in our gallery too. And a lot of, I meet lots of artists who come there and chat, and they're not artists I deal with. Yes, there are one odd art person who will say, can I show my work? And the work may not be of what we are trying to promote. And we have to say no, but we actually engage with a lot of people but they're local people, who come to our local events. So I think that's one place. I think the fairs are another place, but fairs, everybody is a bit crazy and working, everybody, you can't have more than 3 sentences in a fair. But yeah, these are places where you see congregations of gallerists and collectors where they're talking. And sometimes it's important to see, it's like making friends. No, it doesn't happen so easily. You just have to hit it off with someone.
Right. So, for example, if I'm traveling and I'm asking this in general, not particularly, only if I come to Chennai, because now I understand kind of how open you would be. But in general, do you think, despite the rejections, a young artist like myself should keep at least trying to connect, maybe make an appointment, or just try to get a coffee with a gallerist?
it's not easy, but what I would say is, like, suppose you are in Bombay and you should go to these art Thursdays. They have Bombay Art Thursdays, and they do that art walk once in a month. And I feel that maybe that's a time to just go in and chit chat with the gallerists, because mostly they're there. And then the same with Delhi. I think it's, once you make one friend, then it goes from one to the other. Because I have to say, I have friends who are not artists I work with.
Right. Okay. Okay. Is there anything that I could say or do to kind of let the person, their guards down, and let them know, like, it's genuinely just a friendly conversation? I mean, do gallerists respond to a particular lingo, or like, is there something to discuss that could tell them, like, just chill out, I don't want anything, I'm just looking to talk, that's it, literally, no strings attached?
No, there isn't a language. It's really hit or miss, and it's a personal equation that you should build.
Okay, great. All right, thank you so much, Sharan.
Not at all, not at all.
Do we have any more questions, guys?
Hi, yeah, can I?
Yes, please,
Hi.
Apurva, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, it was a lovely session. I just want to ask that, like, you have also worked with museum, like in the starting, he introduced it, like, you've done internships in museums and everything. So, and you're a gallerist now. So what is the main difference in a museum model and a gallery thing? I know one or two line, can you just
there's a big difference. The galleries are much more casual and much more immediate and geared towards commercial activities, whereas a museum is not always commercial, and the things that are common are the educational programs that a gallery or a museum both do, at different levels. So I think actually that's the big difference, that one is commercial and one isn't. But the standards that museums have, for me, I'll tell you what was very interesting. When I worked with the Hirshhorn and I worked with the Smithsonian's traveling exhibition department, I understood a lot of the standards that they were using. I could not get the same standards for myself, but I understood it. So it helped me. There was nowhere that you can go and learn how to run a gallery. So at least it helped me learn a few things. It was very useful.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much, guys. We can have one more question if anyone has any, or after that we can end the session. All right. Thank you so much, Sharan. Thank you so much for this riveting conversation.
Thank you for having me. It's always lovely to talk about our lives.
Yes,
and
yes.
Thanks. We have to continue that conversation again.
We will for sure. Thank you so much for being here, and hope to connect with you very, very soon, and for a lot more things at Iram. For sure.
Definitely. Take care and have to see you soon.
See you. Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye.